Hey everyone, it's me, Joe Saiyan. Today we're going to be doing a build video for Dragon Ball Gekishin Squadra, but before we begin I need to point out a couple things. So if you don't want to listen to this intro, please hit the timestamps in the description or comments below to skip ahead. Now, I currently, at the time of recording, am a part of the Squadra Creators Program, copyright of Bird Studio, SHUEISHA, TOEI, Animation, and Bandai Namco Entertainment Incorporated. Now, with that being said, Squadra is a free-to-play MOBA game designed to be played 4v4 competitively, and I am saying that I am by no means a pro. So, I'm not a pro, MOBAs are skill-based, future updates can invalidate the builds, and moving forward, build suggestions and card suggestions and skill suggestions are all only suggestions, and you should adjust as needed based on your skill level at playing this game. Thank you for watching, and let's just go ahead and get right into it. Alright everyone, it is Squadra time again, and today's build video is going to be for Kale. Berserker Kale, legendary Super Saiyan Kale, whatever you want to call her. She's angry. Super angry. I think she's a pretty unique character to a degree. Very difficult to utilize in the proper way, as she has basically two modes of gameplay. You need to be very abusive and in front of people's faces when you're going berserk, but at the same time, you do need to be very calm and careful about how you play when you're in your base state. She's literally back and forth between this, and you do need to kind of balance it out. So hopefully I can give you a good baseline of how to understand this character and utilize her to the best of her abilities. So we're going to go ahead and start this off with the breakdown. Afterwards, we'll go through the skills and then the card suggestions. So with her passive and abilities, she does have the ability to transform into a berserk state. This berserk state is only done when you go into the super attack, so we will go into that in just a minute. Now, her passive is Courage for Comrades, an ability that boosts courage and powers yourself up. It boosts your damage dealt by skills activated at an ally hero's position. Super attacks excluded. So essentially, you basically want to hug your ally. And this is kind of like a node to her and Khalifa. So basically, stick with your lane partner always so that you can better utilize the amount of damage that she does with her skills. Her rush attack is just the basic energy blast, but it does deal more damage once again when you're near an ally. You'll see that you have a little ring and it'll do more damage. Her skill 1 fires a barrage of energy blasts that explode on impact into a set position. Her skill 2 is basically a long poke attack. It deals more damage to enemies who are further away, but I wouldn't say it's a huge damage increase. The AoE and range and damage dealt increases the longer it's charged. So this is a charged attack, so be aware of positioning on that. Her skill 3 is Energy Sphere. She fires a slow-moving ki blast that gets bigger. It gradually grows in size as it goes forward. And it does explode on impact, and does different types of explosions based on if you hit that energy blast with your skill 2 or skill 1. Now moving on to her super attack, where she transforms into Berserk Super Saiyan Kale. She essentially just goes crazy. She can't really be damaged, she can't be stopped, she can't be affected by anything, and has a huge chunk of extra HP. Her rush attacks are basically her skills at that point, and she's just almost auto-killing enemies. Mind you, it's a very, very short amount of time that you're in this state, but it is long enough to kill both of the enemies in the rotation, as long as they still keep attacking. More than likely, what's going to happen is if you activate this, you're going to kill one of them, and the other one's going to run away. So, alright, so let's go ahead and take a look at her abilities here in the training mode. Take a look at level 1, her blaster shot. Level 1, a little bit of range here. You kind of can plop it wherever, but all of her attacks are going to land right on this little sphere right here. A nice little bit of damage there as long as it hits. So it is kind of a technical move. You do need to kind of aim your hits there. Cooldown being 8 seconds isn't terrible, but it isn't great either. Let's look at it at level 2. So at level 2, the radius of it is going to be a little bit bigger. You can go a little bit farther out too. So I think that's pretty nice. Not really, I think there's maybe like one extra shot in there, but not too crazy of a difference between level 1 and level 2. A little bit underwhelming. But at level 3, much bigger radius, much further out that it can go, and a whole bunch of extra hits and extra blast radius worth of damage. So I would say that's pretty good, skill 1. Skill 2, once again, actually has a charge focus here. If you just launch it, it doesn't really do anything. It does a little poke super fast, and that's it. Whereas if you charge it, it increases in radius and does a lot more damage. Probably the lowest cooldown of any of the attacks, being only about 5 seconds. Not bad at all. Let's try it at level 2. So much wider radius right here. Much wider radius. This is where you can definitely start poking to a degree. Not very quick pokes, I would say, but definitely a very nice long range poke. You can almost poke off screen even. So if you know there's an enemy coming in that direction, you just go pop, you know, kind of scare them off potentially, or maybe it won't. It is a nice little bit of damage if you know where they're at. Now at level 3, huge radius, as you can see, it goes right up to that corner over there. That's a pretty significant increase. Does a nice bit of damage. And once again, short cooldown. Now, skill 3 is a little bit more of a technical move where you can actually follow the ki blast and it just goes right through them. It's not too crazy at level 1, I feel. At level 1, it's going to be But let's go ahead and use our abilities to make it explode. So we're going to use skill 1 to explode the level 3. So you see that big, huge amount of damage right there? That big, huge amount of damage was actually the combination between the blaster shot and this. Because the blaster shot normally does pretty decent damage, but because of this ball going off, it took off an extra whole chunk of damage along with it. So let's try that again with the level 2 skill, or the skill 2. So we did a little bit less damage actually than the skill 1, but we got a huge radius going right horizontally. So that would be the major reason to wanting to be utilizing skill 2. That radius that it explodes at will go down based on the skill 2's level, so do keep that in mind moving forward. Let's look at skill 3. Wow, at level 2 it is a very much bigger difference. Like, look at that. That is, you can literally live in that and walk through it. That's pretty crazy. Not too terrible of a cooldown from the looks of it as well. Skill cooldown only 10 seconds. Once again, damage, blast radius is pretty big right there. Pretty huge blast radius. Let's try that again and do it with the skill 2. Yeah, once again, much lower damage than the skill 1 combination, but technically a very much wider radius. You could potentially hit like an like a Kai, a Supreme Kai, or some extra enemies on the side there for some extra kind of farming damage. So I can see the usage of it, but it does dramatically do a lot less damage than the blaster shot. So I do feel blaster shot does take a little bit more priority, though I will say the cooldown on this being only about 5 seconds is pretty big. It's essentially like skill 1 is essentially double the time frame on that, but it is doing more damage. Now at level 3 with this skill, it is a very big ball. We're doing huge amounts of damage with that. Pretty nice right there. Let's try it again. Except let's try it with level 2. So once again, about the same amount of damage. The damage doesn't seem to change too much at this point with these level 3s. So once again, the damage is going to be basically combined right here with these two. The damage isn't really happening here with the energy sphere. The energy sphere's damage is more like being moved out and around. Like it's either you have a radius or you have a horizontal. But overall, Blaster Shot does more damage, but Skill 2 Charge Force has more poke and lower cooldown. Let's go ahead and look at Kale's, let's look at her super attack. So you can get this at level 5, 8, and 11. She does make a little radius right here. She does have quite the bit of a cooldown, which doesn't start until she actually deforms. You only have a little bit of a cooldown time with this. It's not very long that you'll have that. So she has a whole 105-second cooldown on that super attack. 105 seconds. That's pretty crazy. That's pretty crazy. I mean, we're getting into a minute and a half right there, having to wait for her super attack to go off. It is nice that you essentially get a free kill with the super, but I would say that you can't really put too much stonks in it. Early game, you definitely want to get it at level 5. I definitely want this as early as possible for a free kill and free pressure. But overall, the time you have to wait is pretty gnarly. Let's go ahead and increase that cooldown so we can get to it. I want to look at it one more time, and I want to see just how long her state lasts. So, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, 5 Mississippi, 6 Mississippi, 7 Mississippi, 8 Mississippi, 9 Mississippi, 10 Mississippi, 11. So at about 10 Mississippis, or 10 seconds. 10 seconds isn't too long, but it's not too short either. Pretty decent cooldown. Let's see if it increases somewhat at level 2. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, 5 Mississippi, 6 Mississippi, 7 Mississippi, 8 Mississippi, 9 Mississippi, 10 Mississippi. So literally still 10 seconds. I did notice we did do more damage right there, though. We definitely did more damage. It is quite a bit of a difference there. So more damage at the very least at level 2, but not a humongous, like, crazy change. And the effect still stays only for 10 seconds. Let's try it at level 3. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, 5 Mississippi, 6 Mississippi, 7 Mississippi, 8 Mississippi, 9 Mississippi, 10 Mississippi. Yep, still about 10 seconds only. The biggest thing is that we're doing more damage primarily, and we're lunging forward with an attack that can stagger. Your vanishing steps actually change into forward lunges. Let's take a look at that real quick. Woo! Yeah, it's just like a huge lunge right there. Definitely changes how she acts appropriately, but still only 10 seconds is pretty low. It's pretty low. I still think that this combination right here of her skill 3 and skill 1 is the primary amount of her damage, whereas you just want to use her skill 2 to be essentially poking the enemy because it has the lowest cooldown. I don't think that's a bad idea. It's actually pretty decent, but it's definitely not going to be getting you kills per se with that. Her skill 1 is actually probably her primary amount of damage. But yeah. You can still do a good amount of damage in combination with the two. Now, as far as Kale's helpers go, I think Nail would be pretty good because she's going to be up front and close with some people sometimes, and she's going to need that extra damage because she's more of a long-range fighter. So I think it would honestly help the most to have a backup tool for when people get right up on her. So instead of just relying solely on her skill 1, you can actually rely a little bit on your helper there to balance out her weaknesses there. Otherwise, I do think World King with a big attack buff would be pretty nice, or Botamo to protect herself, or the towers would be best as well. It really just depends on your play style and how you feel like the enemy is going to really push. All right, we're going to go ahead and get into the skills suggestions and start wrapping this up. So I actually have 2 builds for Kale specifically. And yes, you can call me a hater for her skill 2 if you so wish, but I don't find her skill 2 to be too intimidating personally. It is a nice poke, but at the end of the day, damage is what speaks volumes. And skill 1 mixed with skill 3 are applying a lot more damage and a lot more pressure. The huge energy ball just flying at the enemy is going to make them want to dodge it more often than not. But I do understand the wanting to poke with skill 2, which is why there is 2 builds, of course. The second build being primarily trying to focus a little bit more up on the skill 2 there. I do feel like it is mostly better utilized at a later level, but because of the amount of damage you can output with the skill 1 and skill 3, I feel like it trumps the poke that you can do with this. Now, by all means, if you really want to, you can flip-flop skill 1 and skill 2. I totally get it. I totally understand the idea of you wanting to have skill 2 over skill 1. You'd rather have that poking than with the extra damage with skill 1. I personally feel like you can still poke with skill 1, but I do also realize skill 1 has a much longer cooldown, so it's technically a little bit less pressure. So I do understand that, but either way, you do want to focus up on the Ki Blast Ball to get that huge damage increase when you do pop it open with skill 1 or skill 2, and you do want to focus up on her super attack no matter what. Her super attack is essentially the reason that you actually bring her along. So there's not really a reason not to level it up every time you have the chance. It's just essentially down to which skill 1 or skill 2 that you prefer, because you're going to want to go skill 3, but you're also going to want to utilize skill 1 or skill 2 to the best of your degree. Arguably, you could technically sacrifice the level 9 here and put that into skill 2 or skill 1 to whichever degree you want to, just purely because Kale's amount of effectiveness doesn't really change too much after she gets it activated at all. The big change is at level 3 mostly, and level 1 is just level 1 and level 2 are just not that big of a difference. So you could arguably instead of putting level 9 into the super attack, you could change that up into any of your other 3 skills to fit your needs. So with that, let's just go ahead and move on to the card suggestions here. Card suggestions wise, I do feel like because Kale can be a little bit weaker side and needs to worry about people going in on her, the strategic escape would actually help out quite a bit. That it being a blue card, you'll lower your cooldown on those poking skills of yours. But then at level 2, Giant Slayer is probably best so that you can better utilize certain abilities, getting more damage off with her. Because remember, she still is an attacker. She does need that damage, but because she's so much weaker in the beginning, it does make it kind of tough until you get the skills leveled up. And then, of course, level 3 with the limit breaking jump for an extra dodge chance and lower cooldown would be quite helpful. Also, another build choice you could definitely go with is build up. Building up would give her a nice amount of extra defense. As long as you apply the pressure and have proper usage with your lane partner protecting you and helping you out, you might not have too many issues and might not need to back off as much. And still going into Giant Slayer, but then Pursuer. Pursuer is going to be the primary thing you're going to really utilize with her. I can see people wanting to use Wicked Warrior, but you're really going to want to just spam the poke, and you're going to want to spam the skill 1 and skill 3 at almost all points of time. I don't see any reason not to utilize Pursuer over Wicked Warrior, in my personal opinion. And then, of course, we have the traditional builds, of course, for an attacker being Snowball, Giant Slayer, Pursuer, and then Snowball, Barrier, or Vanishing Step, or Limit Breaking Jump, I mean. The Barrier can actually help out for when you lose the super Berserk state, where you might be a little bit in trouble there. Or it could help out when enemies put pressure on you after you put pressure onto them. That Barrier could give you a little nice escape point. But either way, you do want kind of Snowball with her if you really want to put extra pressure on the enemy. You just have to be a little bit more careful because she still can get caught. And I think that's going to be it for the video, guys. Do let me know what you decided to focus up on her skills and her card suggestions down in the comments below. And let me know if any big changes happen during a patch update also. Remember, this is a MOBA, so changes are going to happen a lot. So this might not be a crazy thing to really be looking at in the months to come, but the point of this video is to give you kind of a baseline of understanding how the character works, not necessarily how good or bad they are. Anyways, thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good day and a good night.